And we are live. Welcome,
All
everybody,
right.
to the Deceive Reality Podcast. We have a special guest you can see in the middle, the legend that is Michael Ammar. Everything is reversed, yeah. So if you want to go left, you have to go right. So it's a bit
Uh-huh.
odd.
So that's
So it's our own little magic trick. It's amazing.
well, what a pleasure to be with you guys.
It's a
Yeah,
pleasure
thanks
to
so
have
much
you.
for popping on.
Yeah. So the title of this show is Magicians Gone Wild. Is that
Yeah, so me and Steve said call ourselves Magicians Gone Wild a couple of years back when we were doing shows and stuff, and then we've set up Deceive Reality now, so we're like Magicians Gone Wild in Deceive Reality to just confuse everybody.
well,
How are
so
you
is
getting
this only the magicians in Ireland, or is this
This,
No,
this
only
is
we just started the podcast recently. During COVID and during the lockdown, we started working with trying to get more people in to talk about magic and how they're kind of coping with everything, how things are going on. So we had Will Roberts, who's a magician and a stuntman from Los Angeles, on last week. So it was good to talk to him. So that's why I touched base with you, Michael, because you've been such an inspiration to a lot of magicians I know here and all over Europe and all over the world. Your work over the years. It's great to finally get a chance to talk to you like this.
Oh, you're so kind. Thank you. It's been a long time since I've been up your way. It's gosh, I'm thinking it's got to be at least 10 years.
well,
10 or 15.
it's amazing how quickly time passes.
Yeah, well, I want to get by there at least one more time before I hang up my lecturing shoes, you know.
Yeah,
We
no,
had
it'd be great to get back on the road. And I mean, everyone obviously is kind of stuck at home at the moment, trying to figure out what's next.
Yeah, and trying to figure out when we're going to be over the worst part of it. You know, I guess not until there's some sort of a vaccine.
Sure.
I think, you know.
Yeah, the second we get a vaccine, I'll be running to get it.
Yeah.
And we have a comment in here from Jimmy who says Mike was one of my favorite all-time performers, and he added in afterwards when he had hair.
You know, that goes back a ways. It seems like only yesterday, but yeah.
I'm currently in the transition, so
well,
all these
hair's overrated from my perspective.
I agree.
I think that's what we were talking about there actually recently. Myself and Dave was talking about, like, the magician look has changed drastically over the years, and now it's more like tattoos and beards. But there's always been a facial hair thing with magic, always.
Yeah, I wonder why that is. Just that whole Dante sort of Mephisto sort of looking thing, you know. But
I think so.
yeah. Well, the world of magic has really evolved a lot over the last 40 years. You know, the interesting thing. Go ahead.
No, go on.
Well, if you think about it, since the 80s, I mean, you've really had to be nimble to be able to make a living at magic over the last 40 years. You know, in the 80s and the 90s, trade shows were really lucrative, and lots of trade shows. Then the trade show industry basically disappeared. And it's coming back again now, but you know, with the .com boom and all that stuff, you know, they quit going to trade shows. You know, everybody's got a website.
Yeah.
Then in the 80s, there were no comedy clubs to perform at, but in the 90s, there were 10,000. So to be able to make a living, you had to be able to do a comedy show, and that was like a one-man show that could travel cheap and do a stand-up piece. And then all the comedy clubs disappeared. You know, the private party market was big 20 years ago, and then with the banking crisis, the private party thing kind of disappeared. No private parties hardly anymore.
Yeah,
it used to be a main part of a professionals outlet. So yeah, there's been a lot of types of shows that have coming on. You know, if you had an 8-minute act 20 years ago, you know, you can make a living with that 8-minute act, because there would be a show of 6 or 8 magicians and you'd be one of them. And but that kind of show has basically disappeared. With Las Vegas in the 80s and the 90s, every hotel had a magician or two. And, after Siegfried and Roy's thing happened, they quit having magicians at casinos. And the next thing you know, all of those kind of shows disappeared. And you only had Copperfield and Penn and Teller and, a couple of other big names, Lance Burton, that kind of thing in Vegas.
Yeah.
But there were, I lived in Vegas for 3 years, and there were hundreds of magicians living in Las Vegas and performing at different things. But all of a sudden, all those shows disappeared, and like really great acts, had to get real jobs, because there just wasn't that kind of show anymore. So it's, and now, well, the one thing that you think would never happen is like, well, what if nobody gets together in a small room and watches a performance, a live performance of magic? What could possibly cause that to disappear? And it's like, well, what if nobody can stand close to each other? I mean, who could have seen that coming?
Terrifying.
Yeah, and there's a lot of magicians now that are doing these Zoom magic shows, virtual performances. And I always, felt like as soon as magic goes from 3D to 2D, part of the soul kind of pops out of it. And it's just not the same thing. People, to be astonished, really have to believe something is a certain way. They have to believe it's empty. And they have to believe if you come like this that nothing happened as soon as you went off screen or something like that. But now, somebody could be over here and they hand you something and now you produce it. So the idea of losing that confidence in the reality of what they're seeing, how astonished can they be? I did an interview with Franz Harari about a month ago. And now Franz Harari, he makes the Taj Mahal disappear and Diamond Head Mountain disappear and all that stuff. And he said it was his greatest challenge was always proving to people it would look like this if you were here. That's the biggest challenge with that kind of.
Oh, we've lit glitch.
Oh, frozen a little bit. See if we can get it to come back. Try going down.
Up again.
No, it seems to be frozen. Michael, if you can still hear us, if you could restart the camera or something, that might kick it back in. The joys of technology. Oh,
whoa! He's gone.
We have pictures. That's incredible. And a vanish.
Now, did I really disappear, or
that was incredible?
Or was that a camera trick?
You have to teach
during that time. Did I completely disappear from you guys?
Completely.
Yeah, they're 1 minute gone the next.
We're having a thunderstorm here right now, and that affects our reception sometimes. So it's
we some storms here at the moment in Cork at the moment, and the day after I bought a bicycle, the storm started. So I think it's my fault.
Right. Well, the way in Florida, which is where I am now, Orlando, Florida, they have more lightning storms. It's really an amazing thing when these big thunderstorms and the lightning is just going between clouds, and we have more lightning strikes here in Florida than any other place in the U.S.
Wow.
What a place to live.
Yeah, so every now and then it's a timing thing.
We had a comment that
yeah.
That's it.
And I'm going to adjust something. Every now and then I'm still getting messages from time to time. So I don't know if it pops up on your screen as well. But
there's a few pop up as we go.
People,
but I see something with Zoom magic as well that I find tricky.
On this,
with the Zoom magic, I can even as a performer.
Well,
Yeah.
you know,
Lovely delay.
I've resisted the idea of doing these Zoom performances, you know, or even lectures. I mean, the idea, my concern, and I was trying to think of a way to kind of explain my concern over just internet performances, is that, you know, and my metaphor for it is, you know, I love sushi, right? And a good sushi bar, boy, this is really great. Well, but then we noticed, oh, you can buy sushi right here at the grocery store. Well, let's just buy some here and take it home and eat it. But now the sushi in a grocery store is not as good as the fresh, you know, at a sushi bar, right? Well, but after a couple of months of eating grocery store sushi, I start to think, you know, sushi isn't as good as I thought it was, you know, and I quit eating sushi for a couple of years. But then I'm traveling and I see a good sushi bar and I go, oh, wow, this is delicious. Ah, you know what? Sushi's good. It's just not grocery store sushi that isn't as good. And my concern is if I do a lot of Zoom shows and I try to make you feel like this is my performance and this is what the performance of magic would be like, and it's not as good. After you see a few of those, you start thinking, you know, magic's not as good as I thought it was. And when really it's just the medium that takes something out of it. And so a couple of clients have wanted, and I would say to them, I'm not going to do a performance for you, but I'll do a 5-minute little hello, and here's a quick thing for the thing, and I won't charge you for it. I just want you to remember me, so when all of this is over, we can do a live thing, and it'll be the real deal. And so I haven't tried to create the impression that this is a worthy substitute for a live performance.
Yeah, I know what you mean, Michael. Even with that, you know, you don't want to kind of dilute your magic to a point that only certain things will work for Zoom, and it's not really a real representation of what you actually can do in the real world.
Right, or that it's to be seen as a similar experience, you know. But now, having said that, I do know a couple of guys here locally that have been doing some of the Zoom shows. And one difference is you are recording each person's reactions. You know, like all the people's content is being gathered. And then afterwards, they can go back and watch each, you know, the group's reactions. And you can see which people are reacting, which are paying attention. And they've shown me some clips of people reacting to their online shows. And there seem to be genuine reactions. People go, oh, you know, more so than I would have expected that they're reacting, you know, because I don't think when they're watching magic on YouTube, I don't see them doing this kind of thing, you know, but it's like they're accepting the reality for what it is in this medium. And yeah, some of the things that I saw made it seem like it works on a certain level. You just really have to modify each of the things so that it still seems as fair, even though, you know, there's not somebody to shuffle the deck and there's not somebody there to sign the card and that sort of thing. So you have to work your way around those things. You know, somebody asked me they wanted to do this. Say again?
Sorry, there seems to be a little bit of a glitch there again, Michael. Dave, can you check that out? Or sorry, Michael.
It's fine on my side. There, it was working away good.
So do I freeze up at times?
It's fine on my side.
Yeah, every now and again, it's just a little freeze.
Yeah, but I did get a question in there actually. Michael, have you ever been hesitant to give away some of your best work to other magicians when you're lecturing or anything like that?
You know, as a general rule, I am happy to tip everything. Although over the years, there's been a few things that I've realized it's nice to have something that you haven't taught when you're performing for a magic convention or something like that. No, no matter how much they like to see what you've taught used in the context of your own performance, so that they realize, well, this is what he really does. And yet at the same time, it's always nice if there's a couple of things that surprise them. So I remember the difference between before I tipped all the Toppet stuff, how, that would get a certain reaction, when things disappear, they don't know what the heck's going on. But, once that cat was out of the bag, it was just interesting to know that you're not getting the same real level of surprise when the stuff happens. I mean, so there's been a few things that are just looked at in a different way once they've learned it. But as a general rule, I've only in one or two situations have I ever been unable to do my stuff because I've taught it someplace. And there was a couple of times at a trade show where my booth would be close to another magician's booth, and this guy is doing my cups and balls routine, but he's woven his trade show presentation into all of this, and for me it was just a routine. It wasn't part of my pitch, but for this guy it's part of his pitch. And so I said, well, you know what, I won't do it, and you can do it. And but it's only been a couple of times when I haven't been able to do my full performance, because another magician is using some of the stuff that I've taught someplace. So it's rarely affected me professionally as far as the real world is concerned. Only occasionally has it ever been like, well, you know what, I can't do my own routine because this guy's using it.
Someone's doing your act.
Yeah.
How did the LNL stuff and all those video series come together, Michael?
With the LNL projects?
Yeah, absolutely. How did that all come about? How did they first think up of those ideas?
Well, Louis Falanga, that owned LNL Publishing, was a friend for a number of years, and I saw him when he decided I'm going to be a publisher, and he produced some Larry Jennings stuff and a few things like this, and then he published my book, The Magic of Michael Ammar, which was a big selling project, and it's 1990, and I had just released 3 videos called the Classic Renditions. It was like one-trick videos. This is like the floating bill and the rubber band magic and the invisible bill switch. And then the book comes out, and so Louis says we should do all of the book stuff in the same format, and it's like, well, and this was 1990. Around that time, video projects, they didn't really use the medium in an effective way. They would just say, I'm going to do a lecture and you can videotape my lecture. Nobody had said, okay, well, gosh, you can have an over the shoulder thing. You can have a close up with this thing. So nobody had really tried to use all the things that the medium can do. And videos were very expensive because magicians felt like they're going to really analyze every move, and they're going to be able to take your patter, your presentation. So it was like $75 an hour for a video or more. And it's like, well, how about this? What if you produced a video and every trick was good? Every trick was good. Not, there's 1 or 2 good ideas on there and there's some filler stuff. But what if every trick was really good? And what if you used the medium in the right way with the slow motion and the over the shoulder stuff, and you had a live audience? And if it was priced reasonably, like a $30 release. And so we decided to, wouldn't it be great if they were all great card tricks, classic card tricks, really a conversion of the best of print into video. And the idea that you could have a library with hundreds of books. Now, gosh, I don't have time to go through all those books. What if somebody did it for me? And just got, this is the best of this, this is the best of this, this is the best of this. And at the time, that was a really new idea, you know. And when we did the first 3 classic renditions, or first 3 easy to master card miracles, it was a real surprise at how well it sold. You know, a best-selling video at the time, if you sold 300 or 400 videos, that was a bestseller. You know, so the idea that you could sell thousands if you had the formula right and the value offering right. And yeah, it just kind of changed things.
It really became like a staple in a lot of magicians. I know of my generation and even, you know, before that you had to see Michael Ammar's tapes and you had to study them. And I liked as well that you put in the super practice bit and you had a piece of classical music. And a lot of people, you know, wouldn't be interested in that thing, but it was the right kind of setting to kind of learn the intricate moves. It was a really innovation in a lot of tapes.
Well, what it was at the time was I'd studied these super learning systems and
Sure.
the idea of Baroque music and to change the angle a few times while you repeat this. I said, well, you know, it was like, what if the video could be even better than a live teaching set? If you used all of these different elements to make it more interesting, and the coloring of the background is right, and the image is flashing on the screen, kind of reinforcing certain things. It was just like, what if we used every trick in the book, you know, to make this compelling, and you know, we'll script the explanation so that you're not being repetitive and you're not, you know, just kind of, you know, rambling during an explanation. So if everything was concise,
sure.
Yeah, and it was really, it was fun to sit down and try and think, well, okay, now what can we do to make it even more interesting? You know, what if we routine it so that, you know, you're learning them in sets of 2 and 3 tricks at a time. Michael Skinner told me this many years ago. He says, I always try to learn my tricks in sets of 2 or 3. You know, where this trick leads into this trick, which leads into this trick. He said that way, whenever I think of a trick, I'm really thinking of 2 or 3 tricks, you know, and one leads naturally into the other and leads naturally, you know. So we always try to learn his stuff in little sets of 2 and 3 tricks at a time. And so it's like, well, let's do that so that they see a natural transition from one effect to another, you know, and a live audience and a live reaction. So it was all stuff, just, you know, it was a surprise. Nobody had really ever sat down and tried to think of how can we use the medium, you know, in the most effective way possible. And
I mean, all the Easy to Master series, you know, the thread and cards and coins and everything. There is no filler tricks in there, though. They are real workers. They are real tricks that you and obviously, you know, a team of magicians or you know, kind of colleagues and stuff kind of figured out what do we really do on a regular basis, performing for regular people.
Right, and that idea was a little different. The idea of really trying to do stuff that they would want to do. You know, it was almost like there was a time when magic lectures were like, here's tricks that I wouldn't do, but they're perfect for you guys, so I'll put them in a lecture. You know, they didn't quite qualify to my own repertoire, you know, but they're ideas that I've had, and I can share these things, but I don't want to share the stuff that I really do for people. But slowly that started, you know, what if I really show you stuff that I do? And the quality of the magic in lectures went up a notch, you know, once lecturing became more of an official thing. And a similar sort of thing with the magic on videos. You know, guys were actually afraid of doing stuff that they really perform because they were afraid people would memorize every look and every word and all that stuff. When in reality, the guys weren't using these videos like this. I'm going to really dissect everything on here and memorize it just right. It was like a consumable. I've watched this one. Oh, I'd like to watch another one. Oh, and so the idea of, so it wasn't like you're really giving away your firstborn child, and now now it's gone forever. It was a matter of, yeah, you can afford to make this stuff really good. You can afford to really talk about what you're doing, and it's not like now it's gone. Now the horses are out of the corral. You'll never be able to use that stuff again.
And you have the worldsgreatestmagic.com as well as the website where a lot of that old stuff is up.
Yeah, and so when the internet became a thing, it's like, well, what's the best way, to feature that content? And it's not to say, well, you have to get these 12 tricks all at the same time. It's like, so we broke those sets down into individual tricks on worldsgreatestmagic.com, and you can watch the performance. And only then, if you want to learn it, you can download that particular trick. And they're only $2 or $3 an effect or a set. But if you've got 12 of them off of one video, yeah,
the full performance in the trailer.
It's really a fair way to go about it. I get to see it, and if I like it, then I'll download the secret.
I watched the performance for the mind reading chicken earlier today, which is
isn't that a fun trick? That's a fun trick, boy. Yeah, that's a good one. I haven't seen that one. I haven't done that in a long time.
Yeah, it was something that I recognized the name, and I was like, I can't remember what this trick is. So I watched it, and I was like, oh yes,
the mind reading chicken. Actually, with his, so he predicts the card. It's written on the inside of the eggshell, which was neat. Yeah, that's very funny. That's a good one. I haven't, I need to. There was one time. This goes. It was near the end of the. It was like 1998, 99, when I got booked to go on this private cruise. It was a week-long thing, and there was going to be only 40 people on this. It was a beautiful yacht, but I would be the only entertainment for 7 nights for these 40 people, and I had to do like an hour show every night for 7 nights, and that's a lot of content. 6-7 hours of content, and all for the same group, and you're stuck with them on a ship. So even the little bits of business that you would do, when you just see somebody, all of that stuff gets used. And I actually had to watch my own videos before this cruise, so I could say, oh, hey, I could do that trick. That's right, I forgot. Oh, that's a good one too. And so it was a nice resource to go back to and say, that's a fully worked out piece. I can add that on Wednesday night, and so yeah, it's. I've had to refer to it myself a few times.
Sorry, we all stand on shoulders.
Yeah. Yeah, but you know what? Every now and then you're dropping out, and so
Sorry, Michael. I was just saying, Michael, we all stand on shoulders of giants, and you would have looked up to Di Vernon and people like that. And now, how does it feel for you to be kind of seen as a Di Vernon type person in magic now?
Well, you know what? It's just interesting, the evolution of it all. I really felt fortunate with my timing. In the 80s and the 90s, to be able to see so many of the greats of that generation. People like Jennings and Michael Skinner and Ed Marlowe and Di Vernon and Charlie Miller and these guys were 1 degree of separation from all of the great magicians of the last century. When you're speaking with Di Vernon, you're 1 degree of separation from Houdini. I mean, this is the guy that fooled Houdini, and now you get to interact with this guy. So you feel like there was a real golden era back in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, and to have had a chance to really meet and interact with those guys, it was like a dream. I grew up in a small town in West Virginia, so I read a lot of books. It was all about getting the books and reading this stuff, and then to eventually have a chance to meet these guys was really amazing. Here's Harry Lorraine's like, oh, geez, I've spent so much time with you. I'm just meeting you, but I feel like I've spent 100 hours with you, and to get to meet you in person was really cool. And so now when I meet somebody who says, I grew up watching your videotapes, and how cool it is to meet you in person. It's like, I remember being that guy, and being thrilled to meet somebody that I'd spent so much time with already, and to meet him in person. So when guys say some things like that, I remember being that guy. I vividly remember being the guy that was spending time with that content, and how cool it was to meet the person. So that's really neat. Yeah. One of my favorite quotes is, I'm not sure who discovered water, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't fish, because when you're immersed in it, you're the last one to see it for what it is. Yeah. And, just being so immersed in it myself, I never really looked at it in terms of, okay, now you guys are the big guys disseminating the information. You're the last one to realize it, when you're immersed in it. But I do understand the sentiment of how cool it is to meet some of these people that you only knew through their books or their videos, and yeah. And the idea that,
I think we feel the same right now talking to you, because we've seen you so many times, in our VCR for so many years, and watching different tricks and things. I can even remember very early on watching some of your tapes, and I think it was Red Hot Mama or something. But you were, if I cast a shadow, and I thought you had to cast a shadow over it.
Right. And it's funny, because then I would be at a convention sometimes, and I'd be performing, and then I'd say, no, okay, I'm just going to cast a shadow over this. And that would get a reaction from the magicians, because, I see you do this. And it was just interesting. Oh, I guess I must have done that on a video, and they are reacting to having seen that. But the guy that I got that from was Larry Jennings. Larry Jennings, was, I'm just going to cast a shadow over the deck, so it's just interesting to kind of see that gate its own life. It's very interesting.
Speaking of conventions, a question here was being a magician's magician always part of your plan? Because it seems like you went to conventions at a young age.
Yeah, no, it wasn't by any means. And again, that's the kind of thing that I had no idea was going on, because I was immersed in it, and I was the one doing it. But I was always so excited to learn this new stuff, and then be able to share it with other people. And you know, by being isolated in West Virginia, it didn't matter to me if somebody else was doing a trick that I had come up with. I would never run into an audience that said, "Oh, I've already seen this trick," you know, and so I never felt threatened by the idea that other people might be doing this. Now, guys that grew up around the Magic Castle, you know, and they would be performing where a lot of magicians were performing. Now, somebody in that situation is more likely to think, well, I don't want to tip this thing that I do, because now all these other guys in my area might be doing this thing that I do, and it may affect my ability to do it. So it never threatened me to reveal what I was doing to other magicians. I never felt like that was taking from my marketplace. And that was another difference. For me, it was actually really cool if somebody said, "Hey, I'd like to do that." "Oh, yeah, well, let me show you how it, you know, and let me know how it goes," because I really had, like the earliest thing like that was the card on ceiling. You know, when I started doing the card on ceiling, I was in college, and there was a cafeteria area where everybody kind of ate, and I did the card on ceiling on several spots on this cafeteria ceiling. And then one day I'm sitting there, and I hear somebody at a table behind me talking about the cards on the ceiling. "Ah, that's a magician, and there's a magician that goes to the school here, and he does this trick where they and a card," and they're talking about me. I'm the guy that did that. That's so cool. Oh, and then the realization is like, you know what? That trick, you know, almost every trick you do, it diminishes as soon as it's done. The memory of this is one trick where it keeps going on, and for 6 weeks people talk about this trick, and then they kind of exaggerate how, oh wow. And as soon as that I understood that, I said, you know what, I'm going to put a card on every ceiling on this campus. Every you know, there's buildings here that have 40 classes in it. I want to go in every one of those classes and put a card on every one of those ceilings, so that now no matter where you would go on this campus, you go, there's that guy that does this trick with the card on the ceiling. And so it became something that's like, I want it on really high ceilings. I have to figure out a way to make this work on a really, really high ceiling. And so I do the method, you know, kind of evolved to make this a practical, realistic thing that you can do virtually any place. And so then to start sharing that with other magicians was really cool, because it is a good trick. And people would tell me, "Hey, I did this trick for some celebrities," and they freaked out. And I said, "Oh, that's so cool." So that was one of the earliest things where I had come up with a kind of a different way of doing it, that magicians really wanted to do this trick. And I went around trying to encourage people to do it. Listen, I get so much mileage out of this. You should try this trick. This is a really good trick for what it's for the effort. And some really great memories over just the response from that trick. What was one of the things? Oh yeah. So this is funny. At that university, West Virginia University, they had this beautiful downtown library with dark wood ceilings and stuff like this, and the lobby ceiling maybe 25 feet, you know, which is really a decent height, but you can still see the card and understand what it is. And so I wanted to do it on this ceiling, and I put a card on that library ceiling. It must have been 1978, 1979. Okay. And now in the early 90s, you know, 15 years later, I'm at a bar in Charlotte, North Carolina, and doing some magic for some people. And somebody said, "Hey, I'll tell you the trick that I'd love to see." "What trick is that?" He goes, "I went to school at WVU, and there's a library downtown. What? Oh, the downtown library with the three of spades on the ceiling? Yeah. I'm the guy that did that. You're the guy that put that card on the ceiling? Oh my God. He goes, so whatever happened then with the librarian? What do you mean? And he goes, no, what they had done, they would give this orientation tour, like the first week of college, where the parents and the students, they give them a tour of the campus and all this. And they had built this card into the orientation tour when they would bring them into the library. And then they said, this is the downtown library. You do this. And this is the three of spades. There was a magician in love with the librarian here on the campus. And she wouldn't go out with him. And he did this trick. And it was happily ever after. And so, really? And he goes, yeah, so whatever happened.
It's a long-term revelation.
Right, none of which was true, It really, but well, I never kiss and tell, and that's just so. The idea that there was a trick that took 2 minutes to perform in 1978, and now 15 years later, this trick is now part of the legend of this, downtown campus. It was just a really cool thing, to think that you could do one thing 15 years ago, and that thing is still, getting reactions and causing people to wonder what it is. And I had an idea once. I was traveling a lot then in the 80s, and I started to do the card on ceiling in these airports, and then I got the idea. It's like, what if you put the same card in every airport? That way, if you're traveling, you could know, oh, we're getting ready to land in the Washington, D.C. airport. I'm going to force this card on this person and make the card disappear and tell him, oh, when you go to the baggage claim, look up here, and the card that you just picked will be on the ceiling at that baggage claim. And then it's like, is that your final stop? No, you're going on to Chicago after that? I'll send it to Chicago too. So here's where you look in Chicago. And now this guy, every time he's flying around, you go, this card is following me, right? So I thought, well, you could tell all the other magicians this. You could put this in magic magazines and say, hey, if you put the 7 of spades in an airport, now everybody that flies can use that trick, force that card, and then we can keep a list of all the airports that has the card on it, and this can be a global effect that magicians can do anytime they travel, to know the 7 of spades is going to be on every baggage claim in the airport. Okay, and so then in 1986, I had filmed something with Joe Stevens in Wichita, Kansas, and Roger Klaus is going to take me to the airport after it. And so, hey, Wichita Airport, when am I going to be back in Wichita? I've got to do this trick. I got to put the 7 of spades on there because I'm collecting these airports. So we walk in, and over here is a group of 5 or 6 kind of security guards sitting around shooting the bull. And I stop Roger, and I want to do this trick. They go, well, wait a minute, you don't do it here. All these security guys are over here, right? And it's like, Roger, they love this trick, and so I do it, 7 of spades. And sure enough, this group of guys start talking about it and looking up, and they walked over and stopped us. Hey, what is this? Oh, it's the 7 of spades. Yeah, right. Now, how long does that stay up on this ceiling? And when I look back on it, it's like everything I said was just the wrong thing to have said. Oh, it never comes down. It never comes down? No, never comes down. He goes, wait right here. And he goes over and he makes a phone call, and then Okay, he comes back and says, okay, you're under arrest for defacing public property. Under arrest? Are you kidding me? People pay me to do this. This is a great thing. And the guy starts reading me my rights. You have the right to remain silent. It's like, my God, you're arresting me for doing this card trick? And so I said, no, let me show you what it is. Look, and I do this, and I got this little ball of wax, and I put it on there, and it just sticks up there. I'm not destroying anything. And about this time, Roger Klaus says, wait, how about this? What if we take the card down? Hey, you take the card down, you're good to go. And it's like, this is another 20, 25 foot ceiling, so you couldn't just reach up and take it down. And so how are you going to take it down? Well, it's like, well, how about this? Look, let the kid go on the airport, and he's got to catch his plane, and we'll take it down. We'll figure out a way to get it down. Okay, well, as Roger talks about it later, they had to build the scaffolding. It took 3 hours to get this card off the ceiling, and that was the first time that it ever occurred to me, maybe somebody wouldn't want this card on their ceiling. It never occurred to me that might be the case, and that really affected me. I was I said, I don't want to do a trick I want to get arrested for, and so I really pulled back on doing it for a number of years. And if I was ever in a private home, I would ask them, do you mind if I put a card on your ceiling? And we'd talk about, no, okay, go ahead and do it. And I recall being in some really beautiful home. Oh, you know what? It was Steve Wozniak, the guy that loves magic. And I was in his home, and it's like, well, let me explain what happens. Somebody picks a card, and the card ends up on the ceiling. And you can leave it up there if you want, or you can take it down if you want. And say, no, absolutely do it. Absolutely do it. Well, 3 years later, I'm going back to this guy's house to do a private party. And I'm thinking to myself, I wonder if he took that card down, or if he left it up all these years. And when I walked in this room, it was so cool. He had taken a picture frame and put it around the card. Nice. On the ceiling. And that's real. He goes, hey, it's the best conversation piece I've got. Some of this art costs hundreds of $1,000s. This is what they want to talk about. What do they have a card on the ceiling for? And so some people took it in the right way and saw it for what it is, and yet that was I don't know. I always thought that would be such a cool thing if everybody had the same card on airport ceilings, and now everybody can do this, force this card whenever they're traveling and make it disappear. And I was so disappointed.
I think you wouldn't like it at the moment. So.
Yeah.
I had to put up the good, the bad, and the ugly banner because we asked people to tell stories where performances go horribly wrong and not the way you expected at all. And I think that sums it up pretty perfectly.
Yeah, that sometimes, boy, it just seems so good on paper. But then you get in the real world and it's just different.
With a trick like that, and with a lot of the stuff you've released, like the little hand as well, is something I love. How do you know when something like that is ready to be released or that it still needs a bit of work?
You know what? I've just never been good at coming up with a trick just to release it. The only time something like that has ever really worked for me is if this is something I really like doing myself. And that little hand thing was just something that I was having so much fun with, and it all kind of started. We were cleaning out my daughter's stuffed animals and stuff, and and this one little doll had such a cute little arms. And I thought, wouldn't it be funny, like that? Because you used to just have the hand, but here, what if you had the whole arm, and the whole arm is reaching out? And so I cut this baby's arms off, and it's like, oh, that sticks on my finger. This is really, and when it's something that I really have fun with myself, then I know it's something that other people would want to do. But that's one that is really kind of interesting. I've probably seen 5 or 6 either YouTube clips or Instagram clips or TikTok performances of it, where guys or Reddit, where it's just got 7.5 million views and stuff like that. So that's one that really, because it's such a surprising visual. It's a visual surprise that only takes 10 seconds. So that's one that really a lot of people ended up doing. Oh, I don't think I have it here with me, or it's in reach. But what I do now, because I see that I've got this tape here for some reason. What I do now with the little hand is this is just black tape. I'll take a little piece of white paper, about 2 inches long, and so that it's just over the edge there. And I wrap this around that little baby hand, and it ends up looking like a suit, like you're wearing a coat with the white collar, and so now it becomes a Donald Trump little baby hand, and so I show the coin, and it's like a magnetic coin, so it's a Canadian nickel or a Chinese coin, and I think some of the euros are magnetic. And I was like, hey, examine this coin, right? I say, now, yeah, Trump has a new idea for how to pay for this wall, right? He's going to get the Canadians to pay for it, and now and it's just taken on a new life just by virtue of its topical now.
There was an elderly magician in Ireland called Paddy Ward, the Great Houdini, and he would have been a local magician when I was a kid. And I years later, I ended up doing a show with him. He was doing close-up, and I was doing close-up at the same venue. And his trick for the entire night was the little hand, but he had a whole presentation about it being a leprechaun from Kerry and all this kind of stuff.
How perfect.
So he took your little hand and went and ran with it.
I love that. Back when I lived in Las Vegas, there was a lot of chances to do strolling magic. And, a lot of these conferences would have a cocktail party or something like that. And magicians would perform at it, walking around. And in the beginning was something like that. You pack up all your tricks. I've got 14 different tricks that I can do walking around. And then what would happen is you'd find one good group, and you say, well, I'm just going to do all my stuff for this one. I'll be here 20 minutes. And it's just easier to do that than it is to break the ice with 10 different groups. I want to find this one group, and I want to do my whole set, for this one group. But that's really not what they're looking for. They're actually looking for somebody that will do 2 or 3 tricks here, then go do 2 or 3 tricks here, then go 2 or and the guys that were really good at that were the guys that would say, I take 3 tricks, and I only do these 3 tricks. So as soon as those 3 tricks are done, I go to the next group, and that way you cover a lot more territory, and that little set becomes really tight. And I think that's really the style that works best in that whole strolling magic thing. Is you don't try to do 10 different tricks. You find 2 or 3 tricks that really work. You do that, and then you go to another group. It's just that personality-wise, some people are better at breaking into that group than other people. I always felt like I'm a professional interrupter. I see you guys are in a conversation and you're perfectly content, but I want to interrupt for just a second and have you pick a card and things like that. And there's a certain extrovert kind of gregarious performers that are good at breaking through that, and they do a better job at it. And I always felt like I didn't like having to break the ice at every little group and interrupt, and then what percentage of these people are really going to want to see a trick, and how many people am I genuinely just interrupting a good conversation, and that sort of thing. So I don't do a lot of that anymore. It used to be the idea is during the cocktail party you go around and do some of that, and then they have the dinner, and then you do a show after that. And you've met some of those people when you've gone around previously. But what I prefer now is to do that after they've seen the big show. If I've already performed on stage or stand up for these people, and then I walk around and start doing close up, I'm not they're happy to see you. Hey, good show. And now you really have an in an easier way. So it's not like you have to reintroduce yourself over and over and over again. If they've already seen me perform after the show, I'd be happy to kind of walk around and do some other stuff. So it's just kind of evolved. My own. It's
definitely a pro tip, definitely.
Yeah, my own view of that market has evolved from what it is, but it's still a legitimate part of the magic marketplace is the idea of the strolling magic and the cocktail party magic.
I always find it hard when I've done a few at Christmas parties and stuff like that where they want me to perform during the meal and interrupt someone in the middle of their eating, and it's just I don't get what people want.
I quickly explain my way around that anymore. It's like, know what? When they're eating, it's really tough to compete with food.
Yeah.
I don't want to get between them and their food. I might get bit. But after now it's so logical for them to think, well, everybody's already sitting down. Why don't you go around from table to table? But I really try to backpedal out of that pretty as soon as they mention something like, what? Here's my experience.
Yeah, the wait staff don't like it either because you're either in their way for setting or taking, and it's just not good.
Exactly. Although at times, what I've said to them is like, if there's a special group that you want to be sure see something, I'm happy to do something before, or if something has happened and there's a delay in the kitchen and now it's going to be another 20 minutes before the main meal comes out, I'll be happy to get up and I'll do one quick thing with everybody's attention just to help the flow of the evening. And then now you're looking like you're really trying to help, and so all of them are a little different in its own way, but just from experience, I really like it when they already know I'm the magic guy, and I don't have to explain what's happening and why I'm interrupting this little group of people to perform. Yeah, just experience.
We're up on the hour mark there, and I think this might be a good question. In the era of TikTok magic, what advice would you have for young magicians coming up, and what do you think of those sort of formats?
Yeah, well, personally, I've just in the last 6 weeks started to post some TikTok videos, and because my son is into it, and he's just turned 15, and so he's right in the middle of all that, and from what I've done, and I think we may have close to 800,000 or 900,000 views. I've got 6 or 8 out there, but I frequently see in the comments things like, "Aren't you going to explain this?" Or "What's the point of doing this without explaining?" But you also see people, "Hey, it's nice to see just a performance. Thank you for not exposing this." from magicians who are on TikTok. And so my advice is that you really don't need to expose to be interesting. Just find something visually compelling, and that's 30 seconds or less. And it just requires a different train of thought as far as picking the right material. There's a lot of good stuff that's just not going to work because this trick only, like a moving pip card. We've got this, where the card visually changes from a 4 to a 6, and it's a nice visual. And you'd think, well, this would work on TikTok because they see the thing really change. But I think it's just so easy to say, well, it's a trick card. Now, what makes that trick good is if they have signed a card on the back. And you go, oh, let me see, is that your card? No, what was it? It was a 6. It was. And it visibly changes. And then you show the back, and it's the signed card, and then you give it to them. Now, if it's a card that they keep, that they saw visually change, it's a different trick than if I just do this visual, and there's no context for it. It wasn't a selected card. They don't get to keep it at the end. Then, that's the kind of trick that, I haven't done it on TikTok, even though I think this is a really cool visual thing, because for that to work, they've got to know this is a normal deck. And you're going to take any one of those cards and sign your name on it. And we'll lose it back in. And I'll pull out a random card. Was that it? No, watch it. And it visually changes. And I just have this little simple switch. I don't know if it'll work here, but with the signed card on the bottom, I'm holding it like this, and it visually changes. And then as you lift up like this, you're pulling off the bottom card. So it's just a really simple, switch where you're leaving that there, you're taking that off the bottom to show. So when it changes, and then you immediately show it signed, and then give it back, that's like trick photography live, But if you can't validate it, I mean, that's what makes the Zoom stuff so different. I started to tell you earlier, some guy recently wanted to do the Build a Peanut on a Zoom show. He says, how am I going to make this work? And it's like, well, the thing that makes it work is if they really believe in their heart, they picked any peanut, right? So somehow you've got to make it clear. And so what we came up with is like you have 2 bowls, and you show the bag of peanuts, and you dump them all out into this bowl. And you say, I want to mix these up like this. And now I'm going to take a peanut, and I'm just going to toss them from one bowl to the other. Anytime you want, say stop. Oh, this one? Okay, now you could have had any of these. Now we're going to leave this in full view. And so there's just things that you have to structure in a way that they can still believe the key parts of it. When it's all said and done, they have to know it could have been any peanut. And they have to know that it could have been any bills, kind of thing. But even then, now you're clearly going to have to just say, well, I'm going to take 2 bills. Now here's a handful of ones. Tell me when to stop. This one. Okay. This one here. And here's some money. Tell me when to stop. Okay. So now we have 2 random bills. And now you go into it that way. But when you do that trick live, there's something extra that you can do. When you go to borrow the money, which is really a subtle point, but it's really cool, is you say, I need to borrow a $1 bill. Who's got a $1 bill? Who's got a $1 bill? There's always some guy that's quicker, the first to reach for his wallet. You don't acknowledge this guy right away. You kind of are looking over here. and encouraging somebody to take something out. And then you notice, somebody else has got to. Well, you know what? Here, I'll try it with two. We'll use two bills, and you structure it so that it looks spontaneous. That you've just decided to try this trick with two instead of one, and it's only because two people had money at the same time, but you've kind of manipulated that to happen. He's almost ready. Well, let me see. Okay. Well, here, you know what? We'll do it with two. And that's just a little bit of acting at a key point. But a surprising number of times, there's been magicians in the audience, after showing that, how is it possible that you just decided to use two? What if just one bill had come up? So just that little bit of acting, I'll try it with two. Yeah, let's see what happens. When they think about it, it's like, how can you possibly do that? To just decide I'll put two bills into this impossible location. So that's a nice subtle little thing that you get to do live that you lose when you do it this other way. And the other key point, and hopefully somebody let me just briefly explain what the trick is in case somebody doesn't know. But first you borrow two bills, you tear it in half, and you hand out this half and this half. These two halves I'm going to put in this handkerchief in this wine glass. Now let's pick a peanut, okay? And so now you make the money turn into two peanuts. The two halves sits in the handkerchief in the wine glass. That can only mean one thing. Break the peanut open. There's two halves in there, and they match. Now, at the end of this trick, this guy and this guy have money that's torn in half. Right? Now, it only makes sense to restore those bills because you've torn their money. Right? Now, originally, I would say, well, here, but those bills are torn. Let me take those bills and watch this. And they go back together. Now, when you hand that money back, they expect that to be the same money because it's part of the same trick. And they've already looked at it and they've confirmed and they know the serial numbers, So when you restore those and give it back and it's not the same bill, they go, but this isn't my bill. And it's obvious that it's not their bill because they looked really close at it before. So you can't restore that money as part of that trick. If you restore it as a clear part of that same trick, they expect that money to be the same money, right? But if you don't restore it right away, if you act like the trick is over and you're putting the stuff away, but you're ready to restore it. And a live show, 99 times out of 100, these guys are going, hey. Right. Now you restore it as an afterthought. Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. It's not polite to let you go home with your money torn. Just like that, it goes back again to its exact original conditions. Now, it doesn't have to be the same money. Right? The threshold on confirming that that's theirs is lower. They're just happy to get their money restored. But you act like it's no big deal and you hand these things out. And I've seen the guys, wow, I got the other guy's money. The confirmation of that is lower. Again, just from acting like, right. Of course. I'm sorry. Your money wasn't torn. Let me go ahead and restore it for you. And now it goes back to the exact, and now you go on. And again, it's just from performing these things a number of times, you just realize, okay, you have to structure it in a certain way. for all this stuff to make sense and work and not. But you lose all that stuff when it's a Zoom performance.
Yeah, definitely. I
'Cause-
find even
I think
when I do that with cards,
yeah.
where I get two cards selected, but I never make it clear who I'm talking to when I ask for a card to be selected, and I go in between two people, so two people reach, and I go, okay, I'll do something with two.
Oh yeah,
And
okay, yeah, I'll do too. Yeah.
yeah,
Little acting things like that make a big difference. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, those little finesses, Michael and David, they really make it magic. They really make it very spontaneous and in the moment kind of a thing. And I think that's what years of experience like you have of being the kind of magician that you are. Those finesses have happened gradually, and that is what sets magicians apart. I think from the guy who does a few tricks in the bar to a guy who thinks like a magician and is a magician.
Right, and the idea that your repertoire can evolve, but it doesn't evolve in really hugely different ways. There's little touches, this little touch and this little touch, and so you have to get used to just incremental improvements that end up adding, and once it's all together, wow, it feels different because of all these extra little touches, although essentially it's the same thing. But it was a learning experience for me back in the late 70s when Richard Ross performed the linking rings, his FISM winning, the clocks and the watches, and then the linking rings and all this. And at the time, I had a set of linking rings and did the linking rings. But I'm watching Richard Ross's performance, and he had this extra little thing when he comes down here, and he acts like just now they're separating, and it really fooled me because I bought into it. And now it comes apart. I thought this was a new kind of technology that this guy actually has a set of rings that can kind of come through each other while you're looking at it. I want to find rings like that. And then sure enough, a couple of years later, I get a chance to meet Richard Ross. And I'm talking to him about this. And I'm kind of trying to subtly ask, are those rings available? And it was hard for him he didn't really understand what I was talking about at first, and no, when they come apart like that. Oh, that was acting. And it was like, you were just acting like they were coming through at that point. Wow, that really fooled me. Because I believed it, and boy, that was such an important lesson to me, that I can think I know the method, but if this guy acts in a certain way, even somebody that thinks they know the method can be fooled, right? And that was such and actually that had such an impact on me that Arthur Sederington had the rubber band penetration like this, and it used to be done as a quick puzzle. But I used to think, when you're holding them together like that, you can't tell if they're together or not. You can act like they're still together, and now you can do that same kind of, they're melting through each other right now, and so to just bring that lesson from the linking rings into this simple close-up trick made that a different trick. It's like, you can actually be out, but if you act like you're not, you can pretend like it's just now happening. And just that little thing of acting like they're still together when they're not made that a different trick. All the other parts of it are the same, but if you just really kind of minimize that, and this, I just happen to have a couple of rubber bands here. I mean, the idea of just really slowly showing, and you can't come through or over, and it can't go over here. It pops off the fingers, but right here and right in the center, right there, one strand at a time, they melt through each other. Now that optical illusion where they can't tell if they're together or not, lends itself to this acting thing, and just that tiny little element of acting like it's really magic. Took a simple little puzzle and made it a great close-up illusion, optical illusion.
It's like grand illusion, but in the hands. And I think you were like one of the first magicians I saw do that could take a small close-up effect but make it look a lot bigger. And then I kind of realized that like close-up magic can be just as powerful as big box illusion, and it just depends on who you're performing for. And I think all those little finesses and things you're talking about, Michael, is what's made you Michael Ammar, and it's made you such a an inspiration to magicians worldwide. And I'm sure the excitement you had watching Di Vernon up close, I'm feeling that right now. Seeing you perform. So this has been a pleasure, Michael. Absolutely.
Well, you guys have been terrific. I would love the chance to come and see you guys live somewhere down the road. It may be a year or two before we get to make it happen, but
Ireland, anytime.
It was such a thrill to be able to come and visit people and to talk about magic. I've always felt like a lecture can be as good as any performance. It should be the best of both worlds. You get to perform the stuff, and then you get to say, well, look at how cool this is. So a good lecture should be as good as any good show can be if you've put it together in the right way and you've made an effort to make the explanations interesting and compelling. For me, the chance to go around and talk about magic was, with other magicians, was just the coolest thing ever, and so it wasn't my intent to really have that foot in both worlds, but I loved the fact that it happened and turns out to be as interesting for me.
And we're thankful it happened too.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be the same if you kept it all to yourself.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be doing anything.
Well, thank you. So how many of these podcast things have you all done so far?
This is actually our fourth one. So we went big for the fourth one with the legend Michael Ammar. But we have another 4 lined up now for the next few weeks. So.
Anybody I know?
Do you have the list who we have coming up soon?
Yeah, we've had Nicholas Kin. He's a mentalist from Germany, so we've got him coming on pretty soon. And then a few more surprise ones. I'll let you know in a private message, Michael. And we want to kind of surprise people as we go. Kind of get people to guess.
That'd be great. That would really be great.
So, Michael, before we go, just for me and everyone else watching, I need you to cast a shadow over a deck of cards. It just has to happen.
All I do is cast a shadow. What an interesting little thing.
It's so good. Magic happening.
I think of Larry Jennings every time I do that.
Nice. Thank you so much, Michael. We really appreciate it. And thanks for everybody who watched. And we'll be back again very soon. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for making it all happen.
Thank you.
You think of Larry Jones and we think of you. So there you go.
I love it. Well, take care, fellas. This is a stream.